You're listening to episode number 10 of the Play Your Position podcast.
Welcome to the Play Your Position podcast, where your story matters and we make it count. Here's your host, Mary Lou Kaser. Let's get started.
Hello, everyone. I am very excited to introduce my guest today, Nobby Kleinman. Nobby, are you ready for kickoff?
Mary Lou, always ready for kickoff.
That is terrific, and I know you, and I know that's true. Creative, dedicated, and passionate, Nobby Kleinman is a financial advice and internet marketing expert who has had over 2 decades of experience as a financial advisor and consultant. A relentless self-starter, Nobby has spent the majority of his career as a self-employed businessman who consistently shares his financial expertise with individuals and large corporations. Nobby has been developing his own presentations and methods for years after being wholly dissatisfied with what was available in the financial planning education market. Through his own research and development, he has created an exciting program around personal money management and authored a number of books. Nobby has a no-nonsense and straightforward advice approach to honest advice about planning properly for the future. In his spare time, Nobby enjoys taking regular holidays and can more often than not be found conducting business in coffee shops while enjoying a cake. Nobby, welcome to the show. Well, why don't we start, Nobby, with you describing for listeners the position that you play exceptionally well right now and how you ended up in that position and in what ways it's shaping your life.
From my perspective, I started off as a team player. So I came in as a rookie into the financial services industry. I was playing in a team of people. I suppose there were 60 people in the division that I was playing in. And all of these people were my peers. And I thought they knew so much more. They had all these years of experience. But I realized very soon that a lot of these people were living in games that were being played in the past. They had played the same game for so long that they had become used to it. And it wasn't the game that I wanted to play. I wanted to play a game that was exciting, that was full on all the time. It had to be out there. It had to be in front of people, and it had to be enjoyable for people. The guys that I was working with were going out and playing the same game every day, and there was never a change. So they were always going to end up with the same score. For me, it wasn't about the score. It was about how the game was played. Because ultimately, if you play the game properly, you're going to win, irrespective of what the score is. So I made up my own rules, and management of the team was never very happy with my rules. I started kicking a lot of goals, and I had soon people coming to me and saying, "Look, you've only been in this game for a short while. How is it that you've become successful so quickly?" And it was because I had concentrated on one particular play in the financial services industry, and that gave me the heads up. I became very, very good at it. So I knew what I was doing. I knew all the rules that needed to be known. So whenever anybody asked me anything, I had the answer available. And that just kept elevating me up and up through the ranks to the point where I was playing my own game. But ultimately, the whole division as such were benefiting from that. From the scores that I was kicking. It upsets some people because sometimes if you come in and you're doing something different, you're actually showing the other players up. And all of a sudden people are taking notice and saying, well, how come this guy who's only new in our game and in our industry is doing so much better than you guys? Some of you who've been here for 20 and 30 and 40 years. And of course, like a lot of things, the world changes and there's always new ways to play a game.
Absolutely. So would you mind sharing the specific thing that you were doing? You mentioned that you got really, really good at that one thing. What was it and how was it making such a difference?
I suppose when I entered, and this is all around the financial services industry, when I started in 1987, I came in and the industry at the time was predominantly insurance agents. The government, after a short while, brought in what was called compulsory superannuation or retirement plans, where employers would start contributing a percentage of employees' incomes towards a larger retirement scheme. So I picked up on that and I could see the future of retirement planning. So I got to learn all of the rules that people needed to know, and I would go out there and I would door knock. I'd go back to clients that I used to have from a previous industry, and they said, look, do you know what? You used to look after us pretty well in what you did before. We're happy. We've got to go with somebody, and we're happy to go with you because we know what you were like. I was able to answer all of their questions, take care of all of their concerns, and that just kicked along from one to the other. And I asked for referrals, which I got. And because it was business, it was a headache that business didn't want to cope with. They didn't know anything about it, and they needed somebody who could walk in and say, I'll make it easy for you. Give it to me, and it's done.
I love that point, Nobby, that you just made about doing what other people won't do, because that's how you get what others don't get. There's that old cliche, right?
Correct.
There are always the superstar positions that people are drawn to. There's always the glamorous kind of situation in all organizations that are naturally going to be the ones that people who aren't necessarily set in who they are going to be perhaps wanting, desiring, coveting. And you saw an opportunity to do something that wasn't exactly the greatest, like clean up the locker room, for example, metaphorically speaking. You were going to go and take care of all the muddy shoes and all the dirty laundry. And you didn't care because at the end of the day, that was going to get you farther than any of those other people who were playing by the rules and trying to just have what was popular. And I'm really glad that you brought that up, because when we go through our careers, whether we're entrepreneurs or whether we're working for somebody else, that at some point you're going to have to face yourself and say, what is it that I really want? What is it that really matters to me? And yeah, sure, maybe it doesn't have all the trappings that a certain role has, but boy, it sure gets me where I want to go, and fast. And it sounds like that's exactly what you did.
I keep saying to people that while some people go to work every day, there are other people out there who are business leaders, and they look at what's on the horizon to know what direction they need to head in. I take that a step beyond that. I'm actually looking over the horizon, always looking for the unexpected and the opportunities. So unfortunately, I have sort of itchy feet. I'm always trying to move from one thing to the next, and doing that before I've finished the last exciting thing that I found. But unfortunately, I'm hampered by the working capabilities of other people not to see those same opportunities. So it's very, very frustrating.
When you're on the field, you know your position, you're looking around, but there are some obstacles that are preventing you from getting from where you are to that end zone where you're going to score the goal, where you're going to help the team really move forward. When in your life, Nobby, have you found yourself out of position? Perhaps it was in the financial services industry, perhaps it was in another one. Tell us a story about that particular situation and how you overcame it.
That would probably be in the current situation that I'm in, Mary Lou. After I got out of the financial services industry, I took a couple of years off. Switch flicked in my head and said that I was absolutely bored and I wanted to get back into doing something. But I still wanted to help people with managing their money and come up with a different way to do it, which I did do. I developed some software that actually shows people how to eliminate their debt in less than half the time by doing no more than they're currently doing. I had the software developed, but then I wanted some extra work done on my website and things like that. So I contacted people who were managing outsourcing, but I found that what I was paying for and what I was getting were two different things. So I went to the Philippines to find out why it was so hard to get done what I wanted. And when I got there, I found out what the answer was. I realized what the answer was, and I thought, I'll set up my own team. So it was no longer going to be dependent on other people. It would be dependent on the people working in my team. So that's how I overcame that. But I'm still working with people. The culture in the Philippines and a lot of the things that go on in the Philippines certainly make life difficult. So the game is never over. Every day is a new game over there, and it's a new strategy that you've got to work out to stay in the game and keep zigzagging, if you like, and trying just to get to the end zone.
Boy, Boy, that couldn't be more true because the world has changed and it's changed so fast. And you recognize that. You knew you're going to need help. And instead of just going the route of finding one particular person to outsource with, you went and formed your own team. I love that. That really speaks to your entrepreneurial spirit. And also what you said earlier is that you don't just look at the horizon, you look beyond it and say, this is where we're headed. This is the kind of work that people are going to need more of. And if I can assemble a team that can serve those needs in the marketplace, I've got something special here. So why don't you continue along that vein, Nobby, and share some other insights that you've picked up along the way about how the world has changed from your vantage point. Obviously, you are in Australia, which is on the other side of the world to the United States. From your vantage point there, what have been some of the biggest shifts that you've seen take place, and how have they either challenged you or liberated you in the work that you're doing?
I suppose to give you some perspective, all the guys that I was working with, I would have called them dinosaurs in the industry because they were working with old-time technology. There used to be a computer in the office, and this was 1987, that was linked to a mainframe back into the city. And if you wanted to get on to the computer to get information about your clients, you had to either line up to get access or you would give it to one of the ladies in the office and ask them to get it for you. I bought my first computer in 1988. I was the second guy in the office to have a desktop computer, but shortly after that, I bought a laptop. And the laptop was about the size of, and weighed about the same, 4 house bricks. It was the same size as current laptops, but so much bigger. I bought software instead of using 6x4 cards, and then I just kept going. And once the internet came out in around about 1994, I was the first one to have a website. All of these guys were looking at me as if this is a waste of time and money and effort. What are you doing? You're better out there trying to, get business. And of course, these guys were just sitting there on the telephone, and I was on the internet. And even though it was very, very young at the time, it got me out there. And I motivated these guys even to then using the services off my computer to generate newsletters. And the 60 of them got on board, and we were sending newsletters out that were generated from my desktop computer. So for them, this was something that was totally new, and it increased their business because it got them in touch with their clients, which is what they should have been doing anyway. But the best thing that ever happened was the internet, and the internet over the years has just made the whole world so much smaller, brought so many people so much closer together. Even when I think about you and I having met, this would never have happened. I would never have traveled to the US, I wouldn't think, if it hadn't have been for the internet and the software and the people over there that I wanted to do business with. And I regularly spend hours at a time talking with people virtually all over the globe, not just talking, but actually looking at them because of things like Skype and Google Hangouts. Technology has just done so much, and people have so many opportunities because of the internet. I love it. It's one of the greatest things that's ever happened.
I would agree. It has changed lives in significant ways. And you're right, we never would have met in a previous era because, first of all, there wouldn't have been a reason for us to come together at a collective spot like we did when we were in San Diego a couple of months ago, but also because there wasn't a way to even build a relationship. Skype and LinkedIn and Facebook and Twitter and all these platforms that allow us with a click of a mouse to look at another person, to make a business plan, to decide how can we joint venture together. It's tremendous. And I think it's so great, Nobby, that you have that perspective of back in the late 80s and you've seen the evolution of laptops and you've seen the evolution of the internet and you were an early adopter and you understood what this really could mean and you led some of your cohorts in the financial industry with pumping out a newsletter and connecting with clients. And what's interesting to me is that even to this day, here we are in 2014, right? There are people that still haven't really embraced these new platforms or these ways of communicating. And I know that's part of the work that you do is to bring more awareness to what's possible. And so what advice would you give to people who are still kind of on the sidelines, maybe struggling to figure out what position to play or how to embrace some of these new amazing tools that the last couple of decades have brought to us?
One of the things that I would say immediately is that We're all given one commodity, and it doesn't matter where you live in the world. That particular commodity is time, and you need to maximize and get the most value that you possibly can out of the 24 hours in the day. I like to say that I work 25 hours a day for 8 days a week. And it often seems like that. It's because I love what I do. I just become so absolutely immersed in it that it's hard to drag me away or stop me from talking about it. But I see business people who are struggling and they don't open their mind to the opportunities and the possibilities that are out there. And when they do start to consider it, they become overwhelmed with so much information they don't know who to turn to or where to go, because it's a whole new learning curve. If all they did was say, yes, I agree, I need to do something different, but I don't know how to do it, then find somebody who will say to them, you don't need to know how to do it. We will take care of that for you. Very similar to what I was saying earlier about, or you were saying about cleaning up the shoes and everything like that, just getting it done. Find someone who can do that. That's the whole reason why when I opened the outsourcing office, it was in fact an office just for me. I was setting up a team who were going to work just for me and concentrate on my stuff. But when people found out what I was doing and they knew me, they said, can you help me with my business? And I thought, well, do you know what? It will help me offset some of my overheads over there while I'm starting up. So, okay. And I work on two words, Mary Lou. I work on one word being focus, so that you know what it is that you want and go for it. And the other word is leverage. How can I maximize by doing the minimum? And outsourcing is a perfect example of that. And now our outsourcing team is picking up at least a client a day, which is not bad considering that so far we haven't really advertised apart from our website. So that's not doing too bad. But if people say, I need to continue on doing what I do, that's what I suggest to them. Don't change what you're currently doing. Change the way that you're doing it, which means marketing, getting out on the internet, putting videos out there, putting information out there. Stop holding on to information. Let go of it. Give it freely, because if you don't, somebody else will, and people want to be educated. So use your time wisely. Talk to more people. Stop selling and talk and help.
Yes, you just said something that really embodies the whole purpose of this podcast, which is play your position and get the help you need to get the rest done. You are not the whole team. None of us is. There's too many things now that are on our plates as either business people or even if we're working for a larger organization. There's just too many things now that one person can't possibly do it all. So reach out and find the help rather than take on a whole new role, decide, I'm going to play 5 positions. You don't see that in football. You don't see that in baseball or rugby or anything. You have one person that's the quarterback. You have one person that's the wide receiver on the starting lineup, and so on and so forth. Now, that's not to say that every now and then you aren't going to necessarily, you might have to because of circumstances, but it's temporary. It's not the long term. And I also heard you say a word, Nobby, that I think is spot on, and that's the word overwhelmed. People get so overwhelmed with the amount of information that's out there. And there are resources for people to reach out to that will help you sift through the information and get what you need and leave the rest behind. Because there's just too much. There's not any way possible that any of us can digest all of it out there. So you have to really know what it is you want, know what your position is, and then find those teammates that are going to help you get your ball into the end zone. And your outsourcing business is clearly one of those things. People are reaching out to you and saying, yeah, I need some help and you've got it. I know you. I trust you. I like you. What can you do for me? And you're right there. And you lend a hand and everybody wins.
Correct. It's like having a team manager and a team coach, and coaches have coaches. And that's another thing. Everybody thinks they need to do everything on their own. Psychologists go to other psychologists. Doctors don't diagnose themselves. They go to other doctors. Don't do everything yourself. Get a specialist.
Absolutely. And speaking of specialists, let it take the ball into the end zone and score a touchdown. So, Nobby, you are right at the goal line, and there are less than 30 seconds on the clock. Your team is down 4 points, and it's now or never. In order to win the game, you've got to get that ball across that line into the end zone. Tell a story about a time when you scored a really big metaphorical touchdown to win the game?
As a financial advisor, I was always looking for an opportunity. And one day, a colleague of mine, I knew that he was coming up to age 65. That was about 3 years away. So I approached him and I said, I would actually like to buy your business when you retire. And he said, yep, look, put your hat in the ring, and when the time comes, we'll talk about it. When the time came, he had put his business out there for everybody. In the end, he came back to me and he said, you know what, of all the people I've spoken to, you and I are the only ones who actually have a synergy. So I'd like to talk to you about it. And he said, this is how much I want for it. And I said, well, I'll tell you what, I don't have any money, but I'd like to buy it. And he said, so how do you propose to do that? And I told him that what he wanted was 2.5 times his renewal, which was common practice in the industry. So I said, you know what, for the next 5 years, I'll pay you 50% of every commission check that comes in, and I'll make sure that your business stays in place. Well, in the first 12 months, the business dropped by 10%, and I was feeling pretty hollow, and so was he. At the end of the 5 years, he actually ended up getting 3.5 times the value of the business, because what he didn't see and I did when I took it over was that there was a lot of opportunity that he had missed, and there were many people who actually were going to leave him because although he thought he was good, he actually annoyed a lot of people. But because I'd gone in with a different attitude, I actually increased the value of his business by more than 30% over that 5-year period to give him, I increased his business by 130% to actually give him 3.5 times rather than 2.5 times. So that was excellent for me because I'd taken his business on at no cost and no risk. The risk was all his if I failed, but it cost me nothing. So I didn't have to borrow money and pay interest on it while I was paying him off. So that was a huge win. Nobody ever believed a deal like that could be done until I then sold my business on my own terms again, which was like, normally people would say you've got to spend 12 months in it during a transition period. They will pay 50% up front and the other 50% at the end of 12 months. And when I sold the business, I said, you know what, when I sell you my house, you don't expect me to live in it for the next 12 months. So I'm going to move out and you pay me up front. And that was exactly how it worked. And nobody could believe that it had been done that way. So I always do things slightly differently. Actually, not even slightly, heaps differently, because I believe on getting on with the job and moving on. If there were big games in my life, that was 2 of them.
Definitely. I mean, I was going to say, you're the second guest on my podcast in a week that scored 2 touchdowns in a row. It's awesome. That's what I love about these stories, is that the things that are possible really are limitless. When you put your mind to something or you're willing to take a different approach and go outside the box, so to speak, these kinds of opportunities present themselves. And you clearly made a great offer, proved that you can do it, and the guy ended up 3 times a winner. That's awesome.
Yeah, he was quite happy. He actually asked if we could carry it on for another year.
I bet he did. Oh my gosh, that's incredible. Yeah. Well, along with some of the things you've said, Nobby, and you've shared a lot so far today, but as we bring this game to an end, what are 1 to 3 key offensive strategies straight out of the Nobby Kleinman playbook that listeners could implement right now to move the chains of their lives and or businesses forward?
I would say accept change. In change, there's opportunity. Never take no for an answer. There's always another way to do it. My team might have said to me things along the lines of, no, that can't be done. And I would say, well, obviously then you know that it can't be done. Tell me how it can be done. And if they couldn't give me an answer, I would say, well, then you do it the way that I tell you to. Embrace change. Seriously, let go of the old ways of doing things. There's always a better way, and look for the better way. I can't remember, it was Zig Ziglar, I think, said, if you help enough people get what they want, you'll end up getting what you want. Never go out there with the intention of deliberately wanting something and helping people to get what they want just so you can get what you want. That's not the way it works. You will always be gifted when you can help others get what they want. So just shift the way that you think, open the mind, play a much bigger game. Believe that the game you're playing is all about everybody winning, not just you.
Thank you for saying that, because that is at the heart of the philosophy that I live by, that it's not about you, it's about all of us. There's abundance everywhere, and you're absolutely right. It was Zig Ziglar that said that when you help enough people get what they want, you get everything you want and more. And I cannot agree more. Thank you for quoting Zig and also for exemplifying that kind of an attitude. It's so nice to know that there are people like you out in the world that really do have a bigger vision for what's possible. And you do live from a place of abundance and giving and service. And you have had a great life so far, and there's still so much more to come, isn't there?
Absolutely. It doesn't stop.
Doesn't stop. And so every wonderful, insightful, practical tip that Nobby has shared today can be found on the show notes page at maryloukaiser.com/Nobby, and that's Nobby. And Nobby, as we get ready to say goodbye, what is the best way for people to connect with you? Where is Nobby Kleinman hanging out online these days?
Facebook is obviously one of the main ones. I'm on LinkedIn, but I also have nobbykleinman.com they can contact me on. Our outsourcing company is called outsourceok.com.
Excellent. And these links that Nobby has just shared will be on his show notes page again. You can find it all at maryloukaiser.com/Nobby. Be sure to introduce yourself. He is an amazing individual and probably the sharpest dresser I have ever met.
Thank you.
It's not hard to, outside of the accent, it's not hard to track him down. So Nobby, I want to thank you for your time today, your generosity, and just your spirit of giving more to the world than you take. You really do embody the philosophy of play your position. And I look forward to seeing you at a future event.
Thanks, Mary Lou. I look forward to catching up with you as well.
And that's a wrap. Thank you so much for listening to another episode of the Play Your Position podcast. I hope you enjoyed today's guest as much as I did. And remember, you can find the show notes from today's episode over at maryloukaiser.com/podcast. I would also so appreciate it if you would take a few minutes to leave me a quick 5-star review on iTunes so more people can find this program and benefit from the wisdom my guests share. I look forward to seeing you on future episodes, and in the meantime, it's a great day to get out there and play your position.
Thanks for listening to the Play Your Position podcast, where your story matters and we make it count at maryloukaiser.com.